everybody. So nice to see you guys. I do wish we could be in the same room and fight over the hummus and cheesecake, but what can you do? Next year, L'Shana Haba, L'chaim. So when choosing the format, those of you who studied with me before know that I really like the interactive form, and I like people to interrupt me. I actually ask people to interrupt me, but this is just difficult because of the medium. So I'm going to speak solo for like 20 minutes or so, and I'm gonna do a reading of a very, very unusual text, one of my absolutely favorite Talmudic tales. And anyone who has something to say, either keep it, and then we're going to open this for discussion of a sort. Whitney is going to help us, or write it in the chat. I do not see the chat, but Whitney will collect it, and then we will find a way to have all your questions addressed. And I really want to hear what your associations, questions, remarks, exclamations you have. So I will do my best to have everybody in this room be heard, as I like to do always. So welcome everybody. I'm going to share with you today one of my favorite Talmudic tales, which has a very strange, timely element to it, because it is about social distancing. It is a story of social distancing and one person who broke it for a very good reason. And we will discuss at the end of what's the message of this story vis-a-vis social distancing. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Whitney to replace my beautiful face with the text. Thank you. Much better, right?
Let me open that up a bit.
Good. Let's make it big, 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 big. Can you open it up a little bit? I can hardly see. Like.
Hold on one second.
How
Let
do
me
you
see
do
if
it?
I can.
Either big letters or yeah, this is good. This is good. Can everybody see? Okay. So the prelogue for this wonderful story is from a different part of the Talmud. And it is from Avodah Zarah, the tractate of the Talmud that deals with idolatry. It's a short and fascinating and very cool, for lack of a better word, tractate. And this description is very important for us to understand who are we dealing with here. Everybody look at the first one, the quote. It is said of the angel of death that he is full of eyes. I just want you to stop for a second and think about this image. Because we live in Christian hegemony, we are thinking of the angel of death as the grim reaper, right? With the black shmata and the sickle. The angel of death of our culture is very scary too, but in a very different way. It is a creature full of eyes. Somebody once said that like a tail of a peacock is full of eyes. Think of it. If you've ever seen a fully open tail of a peacock, which is a beautiful yet horrifying vision or comparison. But think of a creature that is full of eyes, symbolizing, of course, that none of us can escape from the gaze of death. None shall escape. Well, we'll see about that. That creature, that angel, which is a servant of the Lord, by the way. This is not Satan. This is not like the Lord of darkness. This is a messenger of God. A creature full of eyes. When a sick person is about to depart, he, the angel of death, stands above his head pillow with his sword drawn out in his hand. So instead of a sickle, our angel of death has a sword or a knife, as you'll see it translated in another tractate. a machete kind of thing. And at the top, at the point of the sword, and think of this horrific image, it's like a David Lynch frame. At the top, at the tip of this sword, there's one sticky drop of gall, of how do you say it, gale, whatever it is, mara, of bitter bile. And this sword, this drop hangs there, not dropping, but it's there. As the sick person beholds it, who? The creature, the angel of death, the sword, or that horrifying drop that's hanging there, about to drop but not dropping. He trembles in fear and opens his mouth, gasping in fear. Then, only then does the drop fall into the mouth of the sick person. And from this is that he died. He dies because of the poison of fear. Think about it. From this, the corpse deteriorates. And from this, the face becomes greenish of the dead person. So, according to this, the weapon of the angel of death is fear. He kills us by the fear of death. I think it's a fascinating concept that we could spend a whole hour studying, but we're not going to. You will see all of these elements appear in the next story. Let's scroll down a little bit. Now we get to the body of the story. And this is about social distancing. And you will find the first, I think you will find the first paragraph uncannily familiar, uncannily timely. Rabbi Yochanan issued the announcement, verdict. Beware of the flies of a man afflicted with re'atan. Re'atan is a legendary disease. We don't know what this disease is. There are many speculations about it in the Talmud. Okay, including that it's a disease that makes it very difficult for a person to have sex. So I leave it to your perverse imaginations to try to understand what this disease is, but we don't know what it is. But we also know, and think of again a horrific image. What I love about Talmudic storytelling is that with so little words, it paints such a vivid image. We see a sick person swarming with flies. It's as if that person is rotting alive. Think about this. Rabbi Yochanan said, beware of the flies of a person afflicted with re'atan. Rav Zera, another Talmudic sage, says, he never sat with such a sufferer in the same drought. Like the wind, the air can carry the disease. Does this sound familiar? Everything we're dealing with right now, this Talmudic text that is written probably between 15 and 1800 years ago and speaks of a reality that of 2000 years ago and more, is so precisely capturing our fear, our nervousness, and our not knowing what is happening, what is the nature of this disease. And therefore we're piling more and more cautionary devices, yes, barriers between us and the sick person. Rabbi Elazar never entered his tent, didn't go into the house of a man afflicted with this disease. Rav Ami and Rav Asi, listen to this. This is almost a joke. This almost becomes a joke right now. Rav Ami and Rav Asi never ate any of the eggs laid by the chickens living in the alley in which a person like this lived. So you see, it's already hyperbole of fear and distancing and shunning the sick person. Okay? However, Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi, who is a very interesting and chutzpah, for lack of a better word, sage. Every story attached to his name is a great story. One could spend a year studying only the stories of Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi. As opposed to all of them, Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi attached himself to these sufferers. He would come and visit them and study Torah with them to sustain them. Like we are now doing with each other, sustaining each other in distance by words of Torah, because we feel it enlivens us. And listen to the reasoning behind this. He pulls out a totally out of context verse from Shir HaShirim, from the Song of Songs, an erotic, mystical love poem in the Bible. And he says, a lovely hind and a graceful doe, one of the most beautiful lines in Hebrew poetry ever. Ayelet ahvim v'ya'alat chen, a beautiful, graceful gazelle lover who's like a gazelle. That's the Torah. The Torah is the beloved. It will bestow grace upon those who study it, meaning those who are in love with it. Would it not also protect them? I mean, basically what he says is it's the power of love. We study Torah out of love. It is the most beautiful and lovable thing in the world. We engage in holy lovemaking. We are safe. We're protected. So I'm not afraid. I'm going to go in, I'm going to visit, and I'm going to study Torah with these people. Okay, so here we go. Next paragraph. When he was about to die, there's a little bit of information missing here. I think the Talmud leaves it out on purpose. When he was about to die, meaning did he actually catch the disease because he was studying with these people? Or he died in a ripe old age, being protected by the love of Torah? We're not told. Of course, it makes all the difference in the world, but maybe it makes no difference whatsoever. Right? I can't see you, but I hope you agree with me. The angel of death was sent to collect his soul. But because he's a holy rabbi, God tells the angel of death, go and carry out his wish. What does that mean? Give him the VIP treatment. Ask him what his last wish is. As opposed to us schleppers, nobody's going to ask. The holy rabbi has spent his whole life in pursuit of holiness. He gets at least that grace of having a last wish. So the angel of death comes and he goes to Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi and he says, okay, time to go, my friend, time to go. And because Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi spoke in like 19th century British English, he says, show me, yes, show me. That's the Sonsino translation. I love it because it's already archaic like the Talmud. Show me my place in paradise. What is he doing? He's making conditions. He's like, my wish is that before I go with you, I would like to see where I'm going. Is that too much to ask? What it also means is my place in paradise means paradise has hierarchy. The righteous ones sit in the better spots. The not so righteous sit in spots. I want to see where they put me, where I am on the guest list. This, by the way, is Talmudic humor at its best. This story is a baffling and wonderful, very typical Talmudic mixture of a holy moral tale and a wonderful irreverent joke. And it's both, it's not this or that. This is a very humorous scene. He's like, well, I would like to see my place. I don't know if I like it. I want to see. Very well, he replied. The poor angel of death is under orders to give this guy the VIP treatment. And it seems like Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi has more requests. Give me your knife, the other, meaning Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi demanded, since otherwise you may frighten me on the way. He says, this knife of yours, this sword, the sickle, it makes me nervous. I don't like that. I'm going to hold it, okay? I don't want to feel uncomfortable on the way. I don't feel safe, as our millennial children like to say. I don't feel safe. Does the angel of death has a choice? He has no choice. He gives him the knife. And they go. On arriving there, and I want you to imagine this really funny scene right now. Whitney, can you push the text down up a bit? Thank you. Thanks, perfect. Upon arriving there, he has to lift him up to see the place. What does that mean? In Hebrew, paradise, Gan Eden. In Persian and Greek, by the way, too, paradise means garden. Pardes, garden, orange grove, pomegranate grove. What defines a garden is that it is fenced. It is protected nature. That's the whole idea of an ancient garden. There's always a wall around the garden and a gate. They arrive at the outside wall of the Garden of Eden, and he says, I want to see it. You can't walk in, you're not dead yet. So how is he going to see it? You know how kids do this thing with the hands where you like do this and the other kid steps on it or steps on your shoulders to go peek above a wall? This is what they do. And again, this is a very humorous visual. It's a really, really wonderful piece of written comedy. So the angel of death is obliged to bend down and like, here, step on my shoulders, go up, look at the damn thing, and let's get this over with. So Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi looks up from the wall, climbs, and like the chutzpah man that he is, just jumps in. And he's in heaven without going through the painful and scary process of death that the rest of us will have to go through. So he basically suckered the angel of death into getting him into heaven without dying. We know that there's other stories about Hanoch, Enoch, or Elijah that are more serious stories, right? But this is a wonderful comedic story, but it's of the same nature. This man was righteous enough to leap into heaven without dying. And we know why, because he allowed himself to attach himself to those sufferers whom everybody else was shunning for all the right reasons, Not to spread the disease, not to put their own soul into danger, but he was willing to sacrifice himself, and that's why he was allowed. Now the comedy becomes even funnier. Now it's becoming mamasha vaudeville. The angel of death chases after him and grabs him by the cloak, by the tunic. Can't you just imagine it if it was a cartoon or a old movie, Charlie Chaplin? Like the angel of death is trying to grab him. He's like, where are you going? Where are you going? But he wouldn't come back. He wouldn't come back. He says, I swear I will not go back. Thereupon, the Holy One, blessed be he, said, from which we learn that the angel of death ran to God complaining. He stole my knife and he is not coming out. He says, if he ever had an oath of his annulled, he must return. But if not, he need not return. What can I say? This is a court of law. If he even once made a promise, a neder, a vow, that he did not keep, then you may take him back, kill him, and bring him here through the usual procedure. But if his record is clean, I cannot give you the permission to do that. So this guy beat the system, I'm sorry. But of course, this is not enough for Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi. The angel of death begs him and says, well, at least return my knife. How am I going to kill other people if you took my sword? But Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi, he doesn't give it to him. And I can only imagine him going, poo-poo, come and get it, like making fun of the angel of death and trying to buy life for his fellow humans. Basically to beat death, right? To beat the power of death. But that's too much. Bat kol, meaning a divine voice, God's voice, goes out like a tired, annoyed mother and says, give him back his knife, give him back the knife, enough. It is required for the mortals. Death is part of the cycle of life. You got yourself into heaven, you made your point, enough. Give him back the knife. And I cannot but think of them as two naughty children and a tired parent. It's like, just give him the knife. Enough, enough. Okay? I'm going to ruin a very beautiful thing for you right now. I'm sorry, but we'll live. When Elijah takes him in, look at the next paragraph. Elijah takes him in and proclaimed, make room for the son of Levi, make room for the son of Levi. So he's escorted into the great banquet, yes, the great hall of the righteous. And who does he see there, if not Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whose death day we celebrated a few weeks ago in Lag BaOmer. The scariest, the darkest protagonist of the Talmud, who is also the great hero of faith in the book of Zohar, in Jewish mysticism, the father of Jewish mysticism. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai sat there on 13 stools of gold. That is a joke. 13 thrones of gold piled on top of each other, like that Dr. Seuss character, the turtle, I think. Like a joke of how righteous he is. 13 thrones, one on top of the other, and he's sitting on top of it, meaning there's nobody could ever be holier or more righteous than Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And leave it to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai to say, okay, is that really him? Let us check. And he puts him to a test. He says, are you the son of Levi? And he says, yes. He says, has a rainbow ever appeared in your lifetime? It's like saying, could you tell me, my son, how a rainbow looks? Can you draw a rainbow for me, basically? And mind, please notice the dreamlike quality of this text. It's really like taken out of a dream. The Talmud does this wonderful storytelling technique where it takes you into dreamlike places without warning. And then Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi says, yes, of course. Of course I've seen one, of course. Then says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, you're not him. That can't be you. What does that mean? So now I'm going to destroy a very beautiful thing in your life. Please forgive me. The rainbow in Jewish and rabbinic culture is not, it is a beautiful thing, but it's not a thing of beauty. It's a warning sign. It is the signature that God put on the covenant not to destroy the world again in a flood. And whenever we see the rainbow, according to rabbinic literature, it is time for us to quickly check our deeds as a society, because that means that God took out the contract and is reminding himself not to destroy the world again because we have misbehaved. So beautiful rainbows are a call for us for moral action, not just to take pictures and put them on Facebook. But the storyteller tells us the fact is that Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi was lying. He had no idea how a rainbow looked like because he was so righteous that in his entire life, his righteousness covered up for the whole generation. So not once was a rainbow seen in his lifetime. But he didn't want to sound, he knew why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is asking him, and he didn't want to take credit. He didn't want to toot his own horn. But everybody knew he was him and he was righteous. Now the little short, funny epilogue of this. Rav Hanina Bar Papa was a friend of Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi. When he was about to die, the angel of death said, go out and carry any wish of his, which of course we know, we've been there, done that. And the angel of death goes and says, time to come, my friend. And Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa says, allow me to 30 days so I can revise my studies, because we all know that before you die, you need to be well versed on Torah so you could go to heaven and prove that you're a righteous man. Very well, he replied. Fine. He comes back in 30 days, and Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa, who has no intention of walking gently into that good night, says, show me my place in heaven, because apparently, clearly, Rabbi Yehoshua Ben Levi appeared to him in a dream or something and said, taught him the trick. They were friends. Okay, and then, very well, he says, give me your knife, the other said. I'm afraid. And then the angel of death said, really? You think that shtick is going to work twice? You Jews, really? You think you're going to trick me? I fell for it once. Don't you think that it is not it is enough? And he still said, look at the Torah, bring a Torah and read it and see if there's a single commandment in the Torah that I did not perform. So why do I have to suffer the sorrow of death? And now it's the angel of death's turn to be clever. And he says, that's all very nice, my friend, but have you attached yourself to the sufferers of Ratan and engage in the study of the Torah with them? So we're going to end the text here. We can stop it here. Those of you download the text. There's a funny epilogue at the end, but I want to focus on the message here. I think that it's very moving. I find it very moving to read such an ancient text and to see how different it is, and at the same time, how timely it is. None of the pre-assumptions of the text are pre-assumptions that I could work with you with. I could say, oh, the angel of death came yesterday and I took the knife. I mean, it probably was a joke then too. It's probably like magical realism and absurd at the time too, by the way. They were not that primitive. But it's a very different mindset than the modern one. At the same time, we can totally relate to this text. They're telling us of a rabbi who attached himself to the sufferers of Ratan, but every New Yorker here spends a few very happy moments cheering and clapping to the health workers, right? Who attached themselves to sufferers of COVID and sacrificed themselves to save lives. We understand the dilemma that it is the responsible thing to distance yourself from those suffering. But it is the humane thing to not distance yourself. We understand this dilemma. It does not get resolved. The beauty of the Talmud is the Talmud does not resolve things for us. It opens questions, throws them in the air, and moves to the next question. This is the Talmud. For every 10 questions the Talmud opens, maybe 2 are answered. 8 are opened, remain open. It is an open question. We do know that it is righteous. It was done out of righteousness, not out of recklessness. And that he did not make a system out of it. He didn't say everybody should go. He said, I am going. I'm going to attach myself to these people. I'm basically sacrificing myself. It is also very beautiful to see the super serious, pious, holy mixing with the comedic, irreverent, and chutzpah. This is a very baffling and wonderful combination that the Talmud has. And I always say that I think this is one of the main reasons why the other religions, especially Christianity, hated the Talmud so much. Because of this baffling, chaotic mixture of reverence and irreverence, holiness and humor. They don't get it. They're like, what do you guys want? Is it a holy book or is it a demonic book? How can you make fun of things that are so serious? It's a very, irony is wrought into the fabric of the Talmud, especially the Agadic parts, which are my favorite, of course, which is the storytelling. At the same time, it is always going to be a moral tale. I find this story to be a refreshing, wonderful moral tale that is very, very relevant to our days. Tricking the angel of death, challenging mortality, being torn between self-preservation and the love of your fellow humans and the love of Torah. All of these things we all, I think, understand. And here comes an ancient tale and sheds a new light on our reality that to us is dreamlike and strange and feels ancient, and we kind of don't believe it's happening. So I find a great source of inspiration and comfort in this text, and in general in studying Torah and with friends and in Zoom. So I'm very excited to hear things you have to say, questions, thoughts, associations, anything. Whitney, how are we going to do that?
So what I would like to say, if somebody has a question, it would be to either wave to me and raise your hand, or you can click in the participants log. There is an option under more that says raise hand, or you can put something in the chat, and then I can call on you and ask you to unmute yourself, and we can talk. We have about, probably about 15 minutes that we can have a conversation, 10 to 15 minutes. So don't be shy. Yes, Jeff Seagal or Siegel, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so...
And I'm going to spotlight you just so that we can see who you are, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
How are you, Jeff?
I'm very well. Thank you for your story.
Good to see you.
Very interesting. I love stories. I love stories of a fantasy nature, and ones which are very concise. But having been one of those people who works at a nursing home as a musician and has been told you cannot come into the nursing home any longer, and all the musicians who used to work there were told the same thing. For our own protection, we couldn't do this work anymore. So the story that you tell us is miraculous in its nature. And our world does not operate on miracles. We are bereft of miracles. We go by the laws of physics and all of that boring stuff. We don't. So what are we to do? What are we to learn about our behavior from these stories? How does this help us in our time?
This is a very, very good question. Thank you for it, Jeff. I personally don't look for a manual in the Talmud to tell me, how to live my life as a modern Jew. I see it as a wonderful source of inspiration. Even I've news for you. Even like the rabbis of later time, they took things in the Talmud, but they already worked with them. Halakha, as we know, it is not always Talmudic, and Talmud is not necessarily what's written in the Bible. I think that the most inspiring thing about this story for me is that, and I can only speak for myself, is the fact that I feel that I am part of a long lineage of people who struggled with this dilemma that you're just describing. And as you see, the majority rule of the rabbis was not very different than your science that you are now saying about our science. They kind of said everything that you and I would think. You don't go into the alley. You don't share food. You don't enter the residence. Rabbi Yochanan, Rav Zera, Rav Ami, Rav Asi, their verdicts actually were very much everything that we do today. We've been being very Talmudic right now in New York. In my opinion, we've been Vayikra. We went back to Leviticus. The story opens for us the dilemma that we all feel. And I can feel your pain when you say that you're not allowed to go back and visit the people that really benefit so much from your art and your soul that you can give them. And I can only imagine how hard it is for you and for them that they're missing this and how sustaining it was for them. The stories is not going to give you an answer for any of this. It just puts you in the long lineage of Jews who grappled with these questions in a deep and soulful way. This is what the Talmud gives you. This particular story gives me, at least. I'm not going to take it to any more prescriptive nature because it doesn't have a prescriptive nature. Thank you for this question.
Kitty Hoffman, if you'll unmute yourself.
Thanks. So thank you, Jeff, for raising that question because I wanted to speak to it in a somewhat different way. So I'm in isolation. People in New York City may not know that Montreal is one of the red zones in the world right now. Like we're in among the top 10 for deaths per population, and it's primarily in long-term care facilities. My daughter, who is a nursing student, is one of the people who has come forward to work in long-term care facility through the summer, through her break. So I feel exactly the combination of feelings that are in this tale. I'm very proud of her for her courage and her menschlichkeit, and I'm worried for her. But she's choosing to be a nurse, so this is what she's chosen for herself. So for me, it's really been extraordinarily comforting to be presented with this story. So I thank you for that. I want to also say, though, that I'm a great lover of literature and of stories, and I grew up with stories of the Shoah. Both my parents were survivors, and everyone that I grew up with was a survivor. And I grew up with stories of crazy, miraculous events. Every single person who survived because of some crazy, irrational, illogical miracle. None of it ever made any sense. So, I just want to add that part of it. I'm a rationalist, but I also, from what I have seen of life and what I've heard of life, there's something to be said for stories that go beyond the rational also.
Wonderful. Can I
Thank
say
you.
something that continues what Kitty just said? Thank you, Kitty. I want to tell you something. I feel very strongly that the whole thing of rational versus mystical is a false dichotomy that is imposed on Judaism from other religions and cultures. I think that we have the unusual ability to be both, and it is almost our duty to remain both. I know it makes no sense, but it makes all the sense in the world if you know it, this system from within. That at the same time, and it goes all the way to the Talmud and even the Bible, it is never demanded of us to throw away logic and become just whirling dervishes of faith. It does not. At the same time, if we're trapped in logic and lose our faith, we cease to be who we are. So this, again, baffling and wonderful combination of logic and faith are, for me, the essence of Jewishness and Judaism. So everything you said, Kitty, speaks very much to me. And thank you for sharing this.
Is there any other questions? We have time for
We have
probably
like a few more, 5 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. We're good.
Any comments?
Perfect. This was perfect.
I'm
Friends,
seeing a lot of smiles, so.
We're happy. This is wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the next session. Chag Sameach, and we'll see you next year in person.
Chag Sameach. Thank you.
And enjoy your cheesecake.
JCC.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Chag Sameach.
Bye.
Chag
Bye.
Sameach.
Lehitraot.
Oh, bye bye.
On the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
Right.
You.
I'm an Upper West Sider, but right now I'm about 53 miles away from there.
Where?
Sheltered in a very small community called Ranana, founded,
Oh.
but it's in Orange County. It's founded by labor Zionists in 1937. They signed the deed on Yom Kippur.
They did.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Okay. So good to see you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, great to see you.
Myra, great to see you.
Thanks, Rubes.
Thank you.
Whitney, thank you again. This is really, really nice. Thank you.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. And I grew up with a father who was a storyteller, and I loved, so I appreciated your references back to kind of like that vaudeville and all of that. I totally got it and totally enjoyed it. So I look forward to seeing you in person next year, if not sooner.
I hope so.
Ruby, that was amazing.
Thank you. Thank